Hello everyone, it's Michelle Lupton here with another card for my Case Me a Christmas card series for 2021. So here's the card that I made, and I'll be showing you the card that I cased in just a little bit. But I'm going to start off by showing you how I made this background. So I'm starting with a stencil. This stencil is the Slimline Plaid 1 stencil from Picket Fence, and I added some Pixie spray to the back of it so I could adhere it to this piece of cardstock. I actually used a piece of cardstock that was larger than I actually needed, but that's okay. I'm adding some paper glaze ombre to this. I'm using the Sky Blues Pot A for this. I added it with a spatula from Picket Fence Studios, and I'm just using this stencil pal to remove most of the excess from it. And I'm scraping that back into the tub because waste not, want not. Just making sure I clean off all of my tools. It's very important when you're using paper glaze. All right, so I very quickly took it off, and don't you just love the reveal when you stencil something, whether it be paper glaze or ink? I cleaned off my work surface, and then I grabbed this very, very old tub of super chunky glitter. I think this originally came from Stampin' Up! I really don't know for sure where it came from because it doesn't actually have a label on it for some reason. But I very rarely use loose glitter, but the look of the card that I was trying to case, I thought this chunky glitter would work really, really well. Now I'm just taking a non-stick craft mat. The paper glaze is still wet at this point, so I'm just pressing the glitter in gently into the paper glaze to try and minimize any shedding that I get from that glitter. Now I let it all dry. I actually let it sit overnight to dry. You don't need to leave it to dry that long. But when you actually stencil with paper glaze, it does make your cardstock a little bit thicker because there is a layer of that multimedia product on the cardstock. And I had used Neenah Solar White in 110 pounds, so it was thick cardstock to start with. So that first cut didn't actually cut all the way through, but no biggie, I just cut it with my scissors. All right, I'm going to show you the card that I am casing. So there's all the excess glitter coming off. I'm going to be doing that for days. My guest today is Debbie Pamment, who is a card making friend who lives in the same city as me. This card that she made, that background with all the glitter, she actually used a digital paper. So she basically reduced that digital paper to 1 inch and then repeated it over and over and over again before printing it out on her panel. It absolutely looks like glitter in the background. Now I took that idea for my background, and there's a few other elements of her card that I decided to use as well. I decided I wasn't really in the mood for a gnome card today. I decided I wanted to use these little penguins. So this is from a stamp set from My Favourite Things called Sweet Holiday Penguins. They are absolutely so cute. And I chose this particular image with all of the presents on top of the penguin's head to kind of match the gnome on Debbie's card. The gnome on Debbie's card had a particularly tall, skinny hat. So I decided to choose this penguin because it looked a little bit similar in that way. And I'm colouring this little penguin with Copic markers. So I used some cool greys for the dark parts of the penguin. I used a very pale orange for the beak and for the little flippers, little feet, I mean. I did actually give him little rosy cheeks, which doesn't really fit a penguin, but hey, I just like giving animals little rosy cheeks whenever I colour them in. And then I used some pinks on the little presents on his head. And then I just grabbed my scissors and did a little bit of fussy cutting, and then he's ready to go. So with my colour scheme, I just wasn't in the mood for lime green with the blue like on Debbie's card, but I still wanted to include some layers on her card. Debbie is the queen of layering for her cards. There's always multiple elements and they all fit so beautifully together. I'm not good with layers. I'm much better with like inking things and techniques, but I decided to go a little bit outside of my comfort zone with this card. So glitter is outside of my comfort zone. Lots of layers and mats are outside of my comfort zone. And I'm also going to be putting some pattern paper on this card. Shock horror. That's absolutely outside of my comfort zone. So instead of going with the lime green layers like on Debbie's card, I decided to go with pink. Just because. So I just grabbed some very pale pink cardstock from my stash, and instead of actually layering it up underneath my glittered panel, I just cut some thin strips, and I am just going to add something heavy for a few minutes to let that glue dry to make sure nothing's going anywhere. And then I just cut off the excess of those strips, and it looks like it's layered on some pink cardstock. Now, I dug through my pattern paper stash, and this is a very, very old paper pad from Lawn Fawn. It's called Peace, Joy, Love. So it is discontinued, but I just went through to find a piece of cardstock that was pale blue that I thought would look nice underneath my penguin, because on Debbie's card, she had a piece of pattern paper underneath her gnome that was layered and matted with a different colour, so that's what I went with as well. You can see that I actually started making this card in portrait orientation, but I actually changed my mind and decided to make it into a landscape orientation, as you can see here. And that's the difference that I've got. One of the main differences that I've got between my card and Debbie's card. Debbie's card is a slimline card and it's in portrait. Mine is not a slimline card and it's in landscape. All right, so my sentiment for this card, I just went with a simple white die cut sentiment. This is a Merry sugar script die from Birch Press and the matching Christmas die to go with it. And I just adhered my little panel of pattern paper with its little pink mat underneath my penguin, and then I decided that I would adhere the penguin with some foam. So sorry, I'm a little bit off the bottom of the screen right now, but I'm just going to add some foam adhesive underneath the little presents, and just liquid glue underneath the penguin, just so that the presents wouldn't be sort of flopping along by themselves up the top. All right, so I'm just going to show you the amazing shine that I got from all of this glitter over the Picket Fence Stencil and the Paper Glaze Ombre in Sky Blues. I hope you enjoyed seeing this video, and thank you very much to Debbie for being my guest today. Bye.